Hello, this is David D. Hilster. I am a critical thinker, dissident scientist, and I'm here to tell you the truth about science, something a university professor won't tell you, the mass media won't tell you, and certainly those science evangelists won't tell you. Well, I get great questions from my audience, and I do have answers. I tell people we have answers, and sometimes there are skeptics about that, and that's the way you should be. Of course, we do have information about the particle model. Where can you get that? Well, you can subscribe to my father's channel, and he talks about the particle model. Where is that? You can go to youtube.particle.guru and listen to Bob D. Hilster. He is very organized in his talks, and we are trying to build up slowly all the pieces of this model. But the question from Jared, and I was asked by someone who actually posted this, one of my videos to their Facebook group, that Jared asked, what about, how can you not have charge and you can have ionic bonds, electricity, and electronics? How can a model deal with that? Well, again, we're only one model, and I can only tell you about how we deal with it. Other models, ether models, do not have charge. Some of them do not have charge. I know specifically Dr. Glenn Borkert, infinity guru, and his infinity universe theory, he for sure doesn't have charge because he believes the same thing. Now let me explain some of this to you, why we can say this and why we have models for this, because it's easy just to start explaining it, but you have to understand the basis. Well, let's look at the basics, okay? First of all, things in the universe are real. Everything that exists has some reality to it. It's a particle of some way. And particles, of course, are made of smaller particles, ad infinitum. That's our model. So particles, you can call anything a particle. You can call the Earth a particle. We can be a big atom in some other in a chair in the universe. But regardless, every object in the universe, everything that has a force, everything that we see that we have a force, even if we can't see it, we say is made up of the physical thing. And that includes magnetic fields, G1 particles, electricity, G1 particles, gravity, G1 particles, light, G1 particles. They're all the same particle. Why do we think it's the same particle? Because they all travel around the speed of c. Electricity goes close to the speed of light. Gravity and light arrive on the Earth the same at time. Again, if you don't know about this, subscribe to my father's channel. So, if every particle in the universe, like Newton says, will go in a straight line unless something gets in its way, and if we, for instance, say, let's go to ionic bonds, you're talking about ionic bonds, the idea that how do molecules and atoms, all that stuff stay together? Well, what happens is, since the G1 particles is in our model is the same particle, we can have one particle, gravity, light, electricity, magnetic fields. How is it then a G1 particle if you say that it's going around a nucleon in the place of electrons? We think there are a lot more. It's not just one electron. There are lots of G1 particles, and that a nucleon can only hold in orbit so many. That's how we get all these numbers, and etc. But the idea is that a particle like the G1 particle, for it to go in a curve and go around in an orbit, it's got to have a force doing that. This is going to want to go this direction and just keep going there. Why would it go like this? Well, there's a force, and that force comes from a G2 particle, a level down in the universe. Just like G1 particles keep the Earth and the Sun and all the galaxies and all those things in orbit and explain the speed of those things without dark energy or dark matter, they keep it in order by what's called the shadowing effect. The shadowing effect is known in the graviton world, that if I have two objects here, my fist and this globe, that if there are particles flying in all directions, all randomly in all directions, that this is going to create, the ones going here, some of them are going to be blocked. They're not all going to go through this, and there's going to be less pressure here. That's what keeps it together. It's called the shadowing effect. Don't know what that is? Look it up. Yes, it's valid. Yes, it can be used. And yes, in our models, it works. Just some people try to argue it away because gravity would cause heat. Well, it doesn't. We can tell you why. Again, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about our model. How do we do ionic bonds? How do we talk about electricity and electrons? So anything like ionic bonds, electricity, all those things, they have to have reality. And in fact, we'll put on the magnetic field as well. A magnetic field, if this is a magnet, the magnetic field travels in a direction. Okay? That's how we get positive and negative. It's not because there's a positive on this side of the metal. That's ridiculous. So G1 particles, which also are electrons, which are electricity, actually go round and round and round a magnet. And when you have flowing, imagine this is a nucleon, and you have flowing electrons. It turns out there's this thing, what we call the Dennou Effect, which is something by Ionel Dennou, a great physicist, doctor of physics in Romania, who shows flowing particles, when they're together, cause attraction. When they're contrary, when they go against each other, they separate. Look it up, the Dennou Effect. That's one of the things we use. That's why ionic bonds work. That's why molecules stay together. It's the direction of the flow of the electrons that keeps molecules together. It keeps magnets, it makes them attract, because if you have two magnets and those flow of those G1 particles are going around the same direction, they will attract. If they're in opposite directions, they'll bash into each other and push them apart. So that's how it works. How do we know about electricity? Well, electricity is a flow. Here's what physics says about electricity. It's one of your questions. Electricity. They say electricity are the holes after the electrons move, and electrons move at meters per second, not the speed of light. Yet, that's not true, because when we have electronic circuits, they're moving way faster. They're moving close to the speed of light. So that's why in our world, the electron, the electricity, light, gravity, all three travel at the speed of C, they're all the same particle. And it works out really wonderful. And in fact, my father, who is an electrical engineer in research in electrical engineering for over 40 years, has used the particle model without any charge whatsoever. And he was a very good electrical engineer for telecommunication systems and in the digital age as well. He can explain all this without charge. In fact, we're coming up with a university that we are going to have, and one of the courses we're going to have in that is a course on the particle models, description of the real physicality of electronic circuits. Does that mean we throw all of the electrical circuits conventions? No. The physics, though, of it is completely a joke in the sense of what mainstream says. Electricity is the movement of the spaces because of the electron's hole it's leaving behind, so the hole looks like it's... Are you kidding me? So, ionic bonds, they're the flow of G1 particles, or you want to say electrons. And the flows, according to Ionel Dennou, make things attract or make things repulse. Electricity, that's a flow of G1 particles. The current is a change in the flow. That if you have a closed circuit, you have a flow, but there is no current because there's no change in it. The moment there's a change in it, like a battery which injects more G1 particles, because inside the battery you have atoms, and those atoms hold G1 particles. Well, those G1 particles are going to be released out because of the way those atoms, because they can store extra G1 particles in their molecular structure, and then you go shooting out. And what we measure as current is a different flow of G1 particles from going through around a circuit. I'm not going to sit here and explain all that, because that's what my father is doing. youtube.particle.guru. And that's why we're writing a book on this model. But everything has physical substance. Electricity, bonds, all of those things. The bonds, again, come from G2 particles. What really keeps the nucleuses in those things, the nuclei of atoms, and these flows just simply give it more mass. If you have a sun and it's got lots and lots and lots and lots of planets going around it, it's got more mass in its solar system. More mass means that the G2 particles, because when you go down a level, G2 particles are traveling even faster than G1 particles. G1 particles create the field we need for gravity to keep the sun in going around the galaxy and the Earth going around the sun. What keeps G1 particles going around? It's a level down because it's infinitely down. And it turns out that our model says something really pretty amazing. That the force, the magnetic force, which can be strong, you get strong magnets, boom, it just overpowers gravity. It turns out that it's the G2 force, which is a level down, which we call gravity, the one level down, it's a strong nuclear force. So in our model, what does our model say about the world? It says that the strong nuclear force is the same as magnetic force when they come together via the Dennou effect. The Dennou effect, inspired by Dennou experiments, gives us the ionic bonds. Electricity is the flow of G1 particles, and electronics are simply a way of controlling G1 particles. And yes, copper wires, for instance, can allow those things, just like if you were to set up a bunch of suns and I was to shoot something down there, that comet will stay in. If I put suns in it with lots of things and lots of asteroids around them, and they are very regular, that's going to keep it, and that G1 particle will flow down that copper wire very easily. And its direction is what we try to call charge. Oh, it's positive on this and negative on this end. It gets a little bit more complicated why it goes that way. Look at my dad's right-hand rule video. Okay, YouTube.particle.guru. So I'm hoping I'm trying to explain a lot of the particle model, but basically it comes down to everything is physical, everything is a force. That is, if this is an electron, or what we call G1 particle, and it's going around an orbit, a nucleus, what keeps these nucleus together is a G2 force field, which is the same as gravity. Just imagine that the nucleus and electrons are just like the planetary model. Oh, you can't do it. It's been proven wrong. Our particle model is explaining things better than mainstream. With this same model, we can explain, and my dad explains it very well, the double slit and why it looks like a particle, why we can turn on a detector in a double slit experiment, and it goes from looking like a particle to a wave. Guess what? Our particle model explains it. It has to do with G1 and G2 because that's in a world that we all see. Okay? I can go on, but I hope that answers your question. Again, thank you so much for trying out my channel. And if you like this, subscribe below. I am going to start talking about the particle model more to give people an idea what that is, because that's what we have in this experience. But if you click on the subscribe and the little bell next to it, and you will be alerted when my next video is out. And thank you, all my subscribers, and keep those questions coming. If they're legitimate science questions, I will come at you and give you answers, because we do have them. That's why this channel exists, and that's why these people, the CNPS and our organization is fantastic, because we have real answers to real questions, and we can tell you where things go wrong, why it went wrong, and then even give you a solution to it. Remember, and don't take my word for it, like these people underneath my videos are saying, show me, tell me, and let me decide. Hopefully this will give it, and don't take my word or anybody else's on faith. Stay critical, stay thinking. I'm Dave D. Hilster. I'm your science therapist. Ciao for now.